What's up, everybody? It's your host, Smooth, of the S&B Podcast, kicking off episode number 2. Today, we're going to be talking about a real-world problem. Something that didn't start off as a world problem has now become a world problem. And joining me today is a special guest. Why don't you introduce yourself?
What's going on, everybody? My name is Shojin. Y'all might have remembered my show Radio, with KUSF and Exile, right here, recorded in the Bay Area, San Francisco, Light Rail Studios. I'm a storyteller, activist, social justice performer, just all around Bay Cat.
All right. Today, we're going to be talking about a tragedy that happened not on this part of the world, in a whole nother part of the world. It was a incident that happened several weeks ago. It was a school shooting. A 14-year-old who was experiencing a lot of pressure to excel in school, as well as bullying, if you will, by his peers for whatever reasons. And he ended up shooting almost about 40 something people total, 9 dead, report between 30 and 34 wounded or injured, including himself. He killed himself at the end of the whole thing. We're going to talk about, his this kid's life, according to reports, how he grew up, his background, the school that he went to. We're going to talk about the culture, the teachers at the school, students, we're going to talk about everything. We're going to get into everything. We're going to break everything down, and discuss what actually led to that point. Why? The whys. The in-depth details beyond just understanding it happened and where it happened, more than just that. We're going to get into all that. Man, I got a great guest to do it with.
So yeah, definitely anytime it happens, it's a tragedy, kind of considering all the different things happening on the planet, all the news that we have access to, and what I consider a symptom of living in the information age is just an oversaturation and access to some of the most tragic events happening on the planet. There's just so many people that live on the planet. You're bound to know some of the worst possible things going on, and we're talking about a school shooting, so it hits all generations. You know what I mean? It hits the kids. It hits kids that graduated. It hits parents. It's always a personal story, and I think the idea of the power play of what the bullying dynamic even means. When we grow up, I'm gonna date myself, but I'm not gonna say what my age is. But there was a whole series, and I didn't come into this world when it started, but it was just a whole thing about Revenge of the Nerds, right? And it was like, what's like sort of a reckoning for people that use their mind, or like were super smart versus like the athletic kids or the jocks. Like it kind of came in at a time, like there was a movie that was just trying to stand up for the underdog. Like the nerds were the underdogs, but now the nerds aren't the underdogs. You know what I mean? We got the tech industry. We got people that know programming and doing crazy things, from cyber crimes to cyber warfare. It's like now the mind is always the real weapon, but there was a time where like just blunt force would be king of the day. It's like, they say, I don't know how we'd be able to tie this in, but it's like in the land of the blind, the man with one eye is king. So anybody with the guns, and I'm talking about like the pythons, the guns, I'm talking about flexing, like anybody that's super yoked or super strong or just acts that way or knows how to fight and likes to try to leverage a situation with another person to be in prowess and to kind of be the top dog, to be the alpha. It used to be purely strength-based, it's like when we growing up. But now that flex is happening in a lot of different ways. So it's interesting, still, like when you're in the schoolyard and you're still a kid and you're developing, and like you might seem puny, or you might just not be able to stand up for yourself. You might be like an introverted kid or something, and so people are gonna be like, why aren't you laughing at that? Or like, why do you look funny? Or why is your voice so squeaky? You know what I mean? It's like, and
Right.
granted, everybody's voice is squeaky when you're that little, but it's all relative. But like, people are gonna find reasons to make you out as the other.
Right.
And generally, if you're a little shyer, or you don't have like a good friend to back you up or something like that,
or come from a poor background,
or have like dirty ass shoes, or people know you didn't go to the big clothing outlet, like you had to go, you had to get secondhand, or like, you might come in with tattered clothes. Like, people notice these things and they really punk you for them. Even though, granted, like, a lot of people that do have the flashiest clothes and the nicest shoes might be the poorest ones in the whole school. They just be fronting in a certain way. But it's because they're really trying to protect the bottom line of, like, what is my status? So I'm not trying to go off on a tangent, but it's like, this has existed for a very long time.
Definitely.
And like, I think the crazier thing is something that the rest of the world would look down upon in America. They're like, man, I don't ever yeah, America might have like whatever, like people came for the American dream, but like then you hear Europeans or people be like, Americans are hella ignorant, they're always just trying to flaunt their guns, they don't think for themselves, they trying to bully and punk the whole world in that sense, right? But now these school shootings are starting to happen all over the world. And so it's crazy to see that type of violence within a place where parents, like when you take your kid to school, that's where you were supposed to go to be safe. Like,
right.
You go to school
right.
to be educated. Now it's better to just be out in the streets. Like, when you go to a school, you damn near in a confined area and you're trapped if somebody want to go postal, or if some kid flips, and it's just, I don't know, I don't want to call it irony, but it's very interesting how certain, you have the prison industrial complex. It's almost like the education industrial complex. Like, you put people through an institution, you put people through a system, but now there's a whole other risk factor. Like, oh, just because I want to get a diploma, or because I'm living up to the pressures of my parents even putting me through an academic system, I might get shot for it just because I'm in the schoolyard.
Right.
Like, that's insane to me, and there were like a couple school shootings, like Columbine, and, like ones that really stand out from, again, when I was a little younger, and we're like, damn, that would never happen here. But then I also remember, like, I'm going to say some crazy stuff right now. Am I allowed to say shit? And you can censor it. I know we go global. But I remember there was one kid, and his dad was a judge. He was Chinese. I'm not going to say his name. But like, we were kind of friends, but he was a bit of an oddball, like a little bit kind of kept to himself, and just was socially awkward. Mm-hmm. And he was getting bullied by these two girls that would just like to make fun of him. And one day he mentioned how he was going to bring his shotgun to school. And I was
whoa,
like, yeah. He was like,
this is somebody that you knew?
Yeah. But I was like, and again, I'm like, damn near, maybe he fit the profile. But I was immediately mad at those girls. I was like, there ain't nobody here that's bothering them except for these two cute ass, like, white girls that they're just fucking with somebody because it's fun for them. But he was probably attracted to them, and he would just kind of get shy and nervous and say some dumbass shit, and then they would just humiliate him.
Entertainment.
I was like, damn, that kind of came out hella randomly. But I was like, bruh, everybody's kind of just trying to avoid confrontation and not cause a problem or end up being the next target. I'm just saying, we live in very complex times, and things are very very nuanced, and they're supposed to be. It's harder because, like I said, in this information age, it's kind of become more tribal. Like, if you want to be on one news source, if you want to have your focus and your specialization, or you just want to nerd out or have a hobby that's not popular, and other people, like, I'm literally sitting here making little wool toys and shit. People like, what the fuck are you doing? Somebody asked me this when I was doing it at a cafe, and I'm like, I could give a fuck, bro. I'm talented, you're not. But they're like, what are you doing? Are you doing voodoo? I'm like, bro, I'm making a fucking Dr. Seuss Cat in the Hat character. You fucking don't know Dr. Seuss, you fucking moron? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, yeah, I'm putting a curse on the cat in the hat. What the fuck do you think I'm doing? Like, that's the best you got? You're the fucking idiot, bro. Like anyways, like that's just how I'll react. Like I might become a hothead in 1 second. Just 'cause I'm like, you ain't gonna make me feel weird because I'm a creative human being.
Yeah.
Like, anyways, going back to my homie and just what I remember reading in that article you shared, and we're not gonna go into too many specific regional details, but I noticed something real interesting because it was the timing of how after they trapped this kid in the bathroom, you know, and nobody in the school would do anything about it. And this kid knew about guns. He had a gun in the household. Like these things all fit the profile. There's a lot of people that have guns in the household, you know.
Definitely.
And there's a lot of people that don't lock them up properly, or, you know, like maybe he just came across a little index card or note card. He's like, oh, there's the password for the safe. Here we go. Like, it's on now. You're like, oh, that's that special thing in that special place that we don't talk about and touch. But also, dude, when you have a gun, like, you wielding life and death in your hands per se.
Right.
Some people,
power.
The one, you know, I think the ones that may be more well-adjusted are people that actually go out and hunt for shit, or they go to a shooting range. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. No glorification on it, but there's places where a certain education about gun safety and practice and just, you know, it's like
proper use.
Yeah. Then again, like just having it around, period, can be a risk. It just is. It just like I had somebody in my family told, you know, he used to always be strapped. And then he told me, he's like, you know what, there's a point where I realized by having that on me, I was attracting a certain environment and circumstance into my reality. And so I stopped rocking with him. He's like, also because I know how to fight, but it's just like, you just never know. Like you want to place yourselves in a circumstance, in a situation that embraces a safer self-preservation nature, right?
Right.
But when you grow up in the streets or you come from a certain neighborhood, you know what the fuck goes down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we literally in a lot where somebody got stabbed to death. And like, that's something different. Like, we're not getting into that, but it's just like, you just never know. It could happen in a good neighborhood, it could happen in a bad neighborhood. Things happen, you just never know. But the difference is when you're in a school compound, it does become this trap for the person that's bullied. But then when they're really in such a dark place and they're really gonna get the schematics, they're gonna know the layout, they're gonna know the timing. They've been watching these people and they're like waiting for their buttons to be pushed.
Yeah. Because
they're gonna validate what they're doing, because they're being humiliated, they're being dehumanized.
And you know, it's a thing where not every kid that gets bullied
is gonna do that.
Is gonna do this. You know, it takes a special set of circumstances. Number one, the kid has to have access to weaponry. If you have no access to weaponry, what are you gonna do? You gonna throw chairs at kids? You know what I mean? Try to beat kids down. You know what I mean? You gonna go beat kids down with a chair, or poke them with a pencil? You know, you have to have access to weaponry. You know, and then on top of that, you got to have the courage to do something like this, because not every kid, even though they have all the the right buttons pushed and they're constantly bullied, they don't have the courage to face their bullies or commit this type of crime.
But here's the other thing, it wasn't just the bullies that got shot. Right.
I mean, in a form, when you say bullies, there's different forms of bullies, and that's one of the things that in-depth details that people probably overlooked. They say, why would this kid, amongst the 45 or so people that were, shot, why would he include teachers? Well, then it goes back to what did all happen, starting to go to school there, and everything just accumulating.
Be like, this teacher didn't give me 100%, and I studied my ass off.
Right, but I mean, I think it goes even deeper than that.
Yeah.
Possibly the teacher was in on the bullying, not so much, physically, but academically. Maybe they had some sort of, dislike for this particular student because of how this student, writes his papers, or how he likes to be argumentative when discussing his grades, and over time, maybe the teachers just built up a disdain for them and therefore would, not give him the grade that necessarily that he deserves, and instead giving him a grade that they want to see him have, had this type of behavior towards him, and they knew about it to where they had proof that he turned in his work, did his work, had a decent, grades on his tests. But why did his final grade come out to as low as it was when other people in the class did the same as him or worse but got a better grade than him? There's no explanation for that, other than this teacher possibly, just did not like that student and was in a way trying to get back at him in a way that they knew how, that they could control, which is, the control of his grade, what grade he got at the end. What they can do is accumulate over the course of time all your work and say you didn't deserve this score, you didn't deserve a C, you deserved a D. It's a fine line right there. The teacher can make up any type of reasoning for that. You know what I mean? And it can justify, from an outside standpoint, administrative standpoint, it can justify why he got that grade. You never know.
So yeah, I mean, like in a place like that, in a system like that, where you're supposedly working on a like a logical scoring system, somebody's personal bias in a position of authority can really affect your entire future. And just because you have a teacher that doesn't like you, or maybe they're just like, oh, this is the one, not even clown like that, not a class clown, but just like this is the weak little kid that is just walking around with a cloud over his head, and we might as well all get in on it because they're all damn sheep. You know what I'm saying? Like in their own, like it's just like a lot of times people, they don't, that type of behavior, like people, all humans are, we're what do you call, like we group up, we do try to join up, like we're social creatures,
right? And
the ways in which certain connections happen or certain bonds against an outlier affect the group and the group dynamic. It really can transcend an age. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, and again, I don't know too many specifics. I'm just kind of really touching upon more universal factors of what this situation entails, and like, how can we analyze it and really, it's a fucked up situation, and I don't want to say it's getting worse, but it's just crazy that it really left the borders of the United States as just a problem with this military, this like military prowess type society,
Right. Well, and we'll go back to that, but right now we're gonna get into the background and the upbringing of this particular student who was bullied, and get into the whole timeline of how everything happened, and get into the innate details and how it shows the mentality of this kid. This kid, first of all, once again, he's 14 years old, went to a secondary school that consisted of kids that were between 12 years and 18 years old. He came from a middle-class family, but here's the thing. His parents divorced when he was 2. His mom ended up not being in the picture, and the dad rarely in the picture, at times coming in during the weekends to check on him or spend a little bit of time with him, if you will. He ended up being raised by his grandparents at the age of 2, his aunt drove him to and from school from time to time. So she was more like the person that he would speak to the most often, because his grandparents, were not the talkative types. He was more close with his aunt, possibly also because of the age gap between him and his grandparents. It could have been, it could have been a factor. Investigators recovered digital evidence showing that he had viewed online mass shooting videos. He had access to a firearm, not purposely, but in the house, the grandpa, he had a handgun, a CZ-75, that was properly locked up, or supposedly properly locked up.
And was that the one weapon that was used?
Yeah, that was the one weapon that was used. And the kid supposedly did not have access to that gun, nor was he supposed to even know there was a gun. And you mentioned about the locker room. I'm not the
bathroom.
The bathroom situation. Yeah, he was, the day before the shooting, he was bullied in the bathroom where, it was reports that it was multiple students bullying him, keeping him locked in the bathroom in a stall, and not allowing him to come out of the stall, the toilet stall. And nobody stepped in to help. There was reports that actually a student told the staff or administrators or teachers or all of the above. It was multiple people that were employed by the school in some aspect that was informed about the situation in the bathroom, and they let it be. For whatever reason, they let it be. Whether it's because they also had disdain for him or dislike for him, or whether it be they just chalked it off as fake information. They didn't feel like it was important enough for them to deal with at the moment. Whatever the reason, they that type of situation, I can imagine, probably happened many times throughout the course of his tenure as a student there. Growing up as a kid without neither of your parents being there, he has a loss of guidance, and being raised by his grandparents being more quiet types, may not have, kept up with what was actually going on with him throughout his young life as a student. His social situation with his friends or classmates, to help him grow as a kid and understand how to be more social and how to really take in what was all that was going on in his life, rather than him taking things the wrong way and possibly just him. It created this anger that was just brewing inside of him, day by day, month by month, year by year, that it just kept growing and kept growing. And he was known as a shy kid already, a kid that didn't really speak his mind or stood up for himself. He just tried to figure out life on his own, pretty much. And what was brewing inside of him, was a result of all these factors. His family situation, not necessarily his financial situation, because once again, he came from a middle class family, and it wasn't that he didn't have access to education because the school that he went to actually was, a prestigious public school nonetheless, but it was a prestigious one. So he did have access to, good amount of education,
resources,
exactly. Whether it be for tutoring or resources just to mental health, or just resources.
But did they have that? Like that's the question I am curious about. Like did they have a school counselor? And granted, even if they did, how effective was it? It doesn't sound like he ever went. It doesn't sound like, at least within this structure and within like even the pressures of what it means to be depressed. It's just like, oh no, like you can't be sad, or that's not a real thing to worry about. You know what I mean? Like, it's clear that there were some. It's not even clear, actually. And that's another question I have. But it's just like, there's a lot of times where the symptoms, like, people have an idea that this person might flip pretty soon, or they might be leaking, right? And even when literally somebody went to tell the teachers about what's going on with this kid, and they chose to do nothing. So they chose to not look at the signs of the repercussions of what happens when somebody is really broken in that sense, right?
Right. And that's a good question, because I really don't know. It was not spoken of as far as the mental health guidance situation at that school, but I'd only assume that they had some sort of mental guidance counselor there, because it's a prestigious school. Even though it is a public school, it's a prestigious one. So I would imagine that they have aspects covered. They have their emergency counselors for specifically those type of reasons. But that's interesting, because staff knew of him being bullied, and did nothing. And when I say they did nothing, I don't mean that every day they did nothing, but I'm speaking specifically in that one situation. And I can only imagine, if they brushed that to the side, how many other times the same student got bullied and the information got passed on to the staff at the school, and they brushed that aside, and that.
And this was a big school, right? It was over 3,000 people.
Oh yeah. 3,100 students enrolled at that school.
So that's something else to think about. It's like, I'm sure he wasn't the only one that was bullied. And like maybe there were like 5 people of everybody that was just like the weirdo, or like the one that people chose to focus on. What I also think about too is what ends up happening to those kids. Because the reason I ask is that when I was reading other articles about the same thing that was happening, they were written in a way where they were kind of like creating a profile against the quiet kid, and now they're like, oh, that kid, he doesn't know how to stand up for himself, like fits the profile of like a mass shooter. Like what are we continuing to do in society? Like, even that article really seemed to continue pointing a finger at a quiet kid. And I was like, what the hell? I was really quiet. I was really shy when I was a kid. I literally in high school, I'd have a lot to say, but there was some kind of a block, maybe in my throat chakra, whatever you want to call it. I just couldn't get the words out. And I would people knew I was a bright kid, and I was creative, and I have friends, but I definitely have my own shortcomings and inability to really embrace and flourish what I don't even like to call introvert or extrovert. I think that's such a funny word, but I just couldn't always say what I wanted to, that was on my mind, and I'd always find these reasons to keep my mouth shut. And I'm sure this kid had hella comebacks that he wanted to say to the bully, like hella fantasies post bully sessions, like, oh, you know what, I could have kicked this dude in the nuts, and I could have just pulled his hair or whatever, I could have done so many things. But when you that space of like woulda, shoulda, coulda, sometimes I think that's what really starts to break your mind. That's what really starts to drive you crazy, because you're like, I couldn't be present in the moment. I didn't have enough support, and like, but I need to do something to stand up for myself. All I'm saying is, like, for me, I remember, like, I made a list of things that I wanted to do. One of them was raise your hand 5 to 7 times a day and just say something, bro. Even if it's stupid, even if it's dumb shit, just say something, because it was almost locked into my muscle memory. It was like my body just wasn't ritualizing the fact that I could hold my hand up, be called, and whether or not I was gonna sound smart or stupid. You know, it's like teachers do say, they're like, oh, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I also disagree. I think there's a lot of stupid questions people can ask, but go ahead and ask it. Like, go ahead and ask it. And it's up to the teacher or the rest of the class to really set a precedent of how judged or punished you are for sounding like a moron, even to them.
Right.
And honestly, there's like, some kids are just, they're aloof and they don't get embarrassed. Be like, bro, he really did say that. Like, and it's like, somebody just asked that question, Todd. And it's like, but whatever, you know what I mean? Like, get it out, like, get over the failure and mistake syndrome. But in environments like that, where everybody's supposed to excel academically, you have this perfectionist syndrome that can really start eating away at you, and then you just know you that one guy that's gonna get fucked with.
Right. And
Thank you for the water, by the way.
no worries, man. The thing with this, you know, it's like a perfect storm had to brew. It's the same thing with every situation like this.
The perfect storm has to brew, but the perfect storm does brew.
Yeah.
And that perfect storm is moving across the hemisphere.
Yeah, and it's the ideology, you know, that gets imported from another place that previously population there did not have that idea. But, you know, because of what was going on with this student, he started, you know, instead of talking about it, what he did was he started looking things up online about people that lashed out. How did they lash out? And he decided, you know what? I'm not going to deal with this anymore. And he decided that's what he was going to do. But now, once again, he could not have done this or accomplished this without the access to weaponry, you know? And that's a big topic in itself, because now the firearm that he used, his grandpa's firearm, was a legal firearm. Like, his grandpa had the license. It was a properly licensed firearm. So you can't, you know, fault the grandpa for having it.
Well, I mean, you can still fault him for having it, but he wasn't doing anything illegal.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
He wasn't in illegal possession of the firearm, or he might not a crime.
Exactly. He wasn't abusing this right that he had.
Right. But, you know, the kid who the kid who did the shooting, he somehow got access to that. Nobody knows how, you know, because it was properly locked up. Nobody even had any idea, you know, none of his other relatives, including his aunt, who I mentioned at first, was amongst the closest to him. Never heard of him, you know, talking about the gun, saying, oh, you know, I found this gun, or, you know, why does grandpa have this gun? You know, it was him keeping it to himself. When he found it, he put it back how it was found, so that his grandpa wouldn't know that he had access to it.
But, oh, I see what you're saying. Beforehand.
Yeah, because...
But how did they know that?
Because...
Do you have a journal?
I'm about to get into that. Yeah. Because they looked into his search history on his computer, and they found that 2 years prior to the shooting, he had been looking up how to handle that specific firearm, how to load it properly, how to make sure that it doesn't, you know, when you're shooting it, it doesn't have any problems. You know how to handle it, like when you're pulling the trigger, you know, how to, all the ins and outs of that specific firearm 2 years prior. Now, if he did not have access to his grandpa's firearm 2 years prior to that, how would he know exactly what firearm to look up so that so that he would know how to handle it? You know what I mean? Along with that, he also looked up, how to approach people with the gun. Like, for example, the SWAT team. He would look up how the SWAT team approached their target when they had the gun. You know what I mean? How they held it, their stance, their motions. You know what I mean? It's obvious that
he did his homework.
It was on his mind for years. As soon as he found and had access to that firearm, this was already brewing in his head. I mean, it's at least 2 years. So you never know. He might have found that firearm even further back than that. And it could have just been on his mind the whole time. And he just decided to act on it, starting with the Google search, or not Google. It could have, I don't know which search engine he used, but some sort of search engine, to where he searched up how to properly handle that firearm. That could have came later. He could have been, who knows, he might have been brewing on that for years. It could have been 2 years prior to that. They still don't know how he got into that lockbox in order to access the firearm, because they said that it was not broken into. He had access to that somehow, some way. He had proper access to that, to where he can make it look as though he never opened it. But the main thing is that this whole society, things are being viewed, acted upon, perceived. It's all contributing to an increase in school shootings across the world, starting with, I would say, the mass school shooting mentality that these kids are having in the US, and it's spreading to other parts of the world, to where they're looking that up and able to draw inspiration, ideas, or even courage to act in a similar way. When you look at the timeline, and this is how you kind of look into the mind of this kid, you can kind of tell how his mentality was, at least partially. And I'm going to explain what I mean. So on the day of the shooting, first, he does something that is beyond me. He kills his grandparents. He first shoots his grandpa in the back of the head. Then he kills his grandma, who was still in the bed. So she was still sleeping. Her eyes were still closed. I think that, that showed that he had some sort of love for them.
Yeah.
Because,
and a shame of what he was, because normally, I don't know if that does it generally happen before or after. Like when the parents get killed, it's like they get killed at home, and then they go and they do what they wanted to do, and then they come back home and then kill themselves on campus, or I'm like, I don't know if there's any kind of pattern to that, but the fact that he was like, he could never have them live even with what he was about to do.
Right. See, he killed them before his acts, which means he did not want them to go through any sort of
mental
stress
anguish.
Or mental anguish, exactly, of the repercussions of his actions that he was about to, commit. Now, shooting his grandpa in the back of the head while he was standing, meaning he did not want to look at his grandpa.
Yeah.
And he didn't want his grandpa to see him, have the vision of him holding the gun pointed at him like this, ready to kill him. He didn't even want him to feel that or have that thought in his mind.
You're saying with his grandpa, like he was trying to not cause pain or suffering for that.
Exactly.
For them.
Exactly.
Although it's a pretty psycho way to do it.
Exactly. Just looking into his mind and breaking down why he did what he did, how he did what he did, and shooting his grandma while she was still asleep. It was kind of, in a way, like, if you're gonna kill somebody, to make sure that they experience as least pain as possible, do it in their sleep, right? That's what he was possibly thinking. I'm not saying that that's what you should do. I'm saying that's probably what he was thinking. Then he proceeded to go to the school, and this is where it gets interesting, because we spoke about the teachers earlier and how the teachers played a role in his experiences at school, being bullied, by the way, which was confirmed by many students that were interviewed. They all stated that he was being bullied, except with the exception of a few students who said that there was no bullying going on at the school, none whatsoever. And that is a red flag right there, because
it's like when I went to Hawaii and somebody's like, there's no racism in our state. I'm like,
you're probably the racist.
Well, no, he was Hawaiian. But I'm like, how much in denial are you of the colonialism and cultural exploitation of the entire economy? But because if you actually, what's gonna happen to your mind if you start accepting how fucked you've been?
Right. But here's the interesting part, and why I said what I said, because this exact kid also stated, I was just playing with that kid, like we were, socializing and playing in some form of manner. He said it. We were just over there playing the other day.
Like, I'm not a victim. This
but
is
at the
just
same
like,
time,
we're cool. I'm cool. I'm not weak. I'm not being bullied.
But at the same time, all the other kids stated that he didn't have friends.
And these were his only friends. Like, that was his only social interaction.
That was not. That's my whole point.
Yeah.
Is those weren't his friends.
They weren't his
were
friends.
The bullies.
Yeah.
They were trying to cover up, more than likely, trying to cover up for the activity going on, because they did not want to get in trouble as the ones responsible, possibly the main contributors to that kid going off like that, because that they would bring shame to their families. You feel what I'm saying? That's what I think. I'm not saying I don't have the concrete proof about it, but based on the reports, it seems as though that's possibly what was happening, was that the kid was trying to cover his tracks. Him and his two homies, I believe it was 3 of them that was being interviewed, and them saying the same things. And it just was odd, because almost the entire other student population that was interviewed said the opposite of what they said, which was that he was being bullied constantly, and that it was a lot of kids was bullying him. And they actually, you know what? I think in one of the reports that it mentioned, or a kid might have mentioned, that he was being bullied in a specific area of the school. And I think it was the same area that kid said that he was playing with that kid in that area. He might have been trying to cover up his tracks and trying to make it seem, if somebody says that he was being bullied in that area and pinpointing him, he was trying to cover his tracks by saying that they were just playing, that he was not really being serious with him and really bullying him, but he was just messing with him. You know what I mean?
Going back to this idea of anonymity too, even them on this campus, you know what I mean? Maybe they're just like, there's so many people there who's really noticing what we do, like everybody has their own world until there's a light on that world.
True. 3,100 kids is a lot of kids, man. I mean, 2,200 is a student population that I've seen personally, and that to me was a whole lot of kids. I can't imagine you throwing another 1,000 on there. You put another 1,000 kids on that's an insane number of students on one campus. I can see like having it, 3,000 kids as the population of school, but split into multiple campuses. We're talking about, this is one campus. I mean, that's crazy. That's insane. But yeah, going back to, the timeline of what happened. So, we covered his grandparents getting killed. He gets to campus, and get this, when he gets to the school, what's the first thing he does? He goes to look for that teacher, that specific teacher, the same one that I was talking about earlier that gave him an unreasonable grade, regardless of the fact that he finished and all of his work. Matter of fact, it was stated in the reports he finished all of his work for that class. He had, above average test scores or whatever, but that teacher, it's failed him.
Wow.
Why would the teacher fail him when he had an above average result in all his test scores and he done all his work? That doesn't make sense.
I mean, what was the class?
It's the equivalent to English class. It's a language course, but it's his first language. So it's a class that definitely he had no problems, or should have had no problems in that class, passing that class, considering the fact that he was a above average student and did above average work. But yeah, I just wanted to point out that was a very interesting fact, that he seeked out that teacher as the first person he was looking for.
Did he kill him?
That I don't know. They didn't state if
who was killed?
I don't think he found that teacher. He asked, what happened was when he got to the campus, he asked the student where that teacher was, and that student, I think, said that teacher went somewhere, and so he immediately targeted, I think, another teacher, a different teacher, I think, among on top of students. So like it was among the teacher and the students was amongst the group of people he targeted. It was certain people he targeted. He didn't just start spraying at everybody. He didn't just start shooting everybody.
Until later.
No, even later. He targeted certain specific
But it was
people.
like 40 people. 40, 50 people got shot.
Which leads me to believe that he was being bullied by a ton of people. It wasn't just a few people that was bullying him. You know what I mean?
Well, that's a lot of people to spray. Like if you know what I mean? There's a group of people that put him in the bathroom. There's just having bad aim and not giving a fuck. And then there's just what starts going through your mind.
That's true. So maybe the people that he hit, it might even be one of them situations where because he's not experienced enough at using a firearm, even though he was, within a.
But it was a
range of
handgun.
Yeah.
He had a hand. It's not like he had an automatic.
Right.
So
but
he
he's
couldn't.
Also 14.
But he knew how to, bruh. When you got one bullet coming out your chamber, like unless he's running after people chasing him down.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it
but we don't
been a
know.
situation.
There's too much to.
Well, I mean, they actually had, I think a video, if I'm not mistaken, where he's running, chasing kids at the school. Like, there was video footage of him from the opposite side.
But then, okay, so let's also backtrack too. What specifically happened in the bathroom? Like, let's say it was like a little clique.
Yeah.
Like maybe 8-9 people.
Yeah.
Like, granted, I never roll with any Asian gangs, but I know they can roll deep on any campus. Yeah. So it's just like anybody associated, anybody who saw, could have been as big as like a small private, it could have been a group of 30. Like it could have just been a group.
Right.
But I feel like we're not going off of enough details to know what his motives were beyond. And also it's like, I don't know what grades he got. I don't know what class the other teacher was. Like, cause there's some people that are just like, fuck you. You didn't give me an A. I'm a fucking blast your ass. Some people in a volatile, like non-conscionable state of mind are gonna do some kind of extreme behavior. So it's like, well, if I can't get that one guy, let me get the other one who teased me in class. But it might not have, like, I'm just saying, what happens for you once he killed his grandparents, it was on.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? Where it's just like,
there was no going back.
And in order, like, not to say in order, like, there's no justifying that regardless. I think it's more important to focus on why these things are happening with bullying in general, because at the end of the day, they're trying to set it like it's way beyond a cry for help at this point, but it's just like, you shouldn't have done that. Like, you fucked with the wrong one, but you fucked with the right one that fit that profile of being a weak person. But y'all put yourself, you know what I'm saying? It's just like that. I think that the take home for me again is I just hope people bully less, but then also what it does is there's people that fit the profile that start knowing how to be hella weird and acting like they're like, I'm just gonna, like there was a story about a dude in Philadelphia who wore this like baby devil mask. Did you hear about this?
No.
And he's just running around at 5 a.m. chasing women. He's like, do you want to die? Do you know what it feels like to die? Or something crazy. And then some girl just kicked him in the stomach. She's like, he didn't know how to fight. He was just terrorizing people. I'm like, and they said he was between 16 and 20 years old. Who know what caused him to snap and also just target women that he was maybe more stronger, more powerful than again? And clearly not. Like there was one girl that just kicked him right in the chest.
Yeah.
And then he fell and he ran to the, and it's not funny, but it was just funny, like in the picture that I saw, like the girl just has like a boot up to the camera, like I can kick. Yeah. And but what was he a victim of? Like, cause it sounds like maybe he just went and did that. Maybe somebody just dared him or he's doing it for social media. But my point is there's something that triggers in people to want to seek some form of justice or reconciliation. Right. And it generally has to do with bullies. Yeah. Like just like, okay, like maybe they're beat at home and maybe but sometimes here's the other thing. It's like we talking about, he didn't have his parents. He was raised by his grandparents. There's a lot of amazing people that are just raised by their grandparents. Right. There's a lot of psychotic, sociopathic people that have everything in place. They fit the most successful profile, but there's something wrong with their psychology, or they just really like to harp on people's emotions in a totally other manipulative way, you know? Right. So I mean it leaves a lot to be answered. I think there's still more that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. It's not one or two or three factors. I think it was a domino effect that created this event. But speaking about weak mentality, after he did what he did and he shot all the people that he shot, he went to a quiet area and he
in the school and
he offed himself. Because he didn't want to have to deal with the consequences of his actions, and he already made it clear that he was gonna, do this as a conclusion to his life. It's just a sad situation, and I believe that it's a bullying culture that's traveled, and not only traveled, but what was created from the bully culture is a phenomenon called mass school shooting. And it's giving people ideas to recreate chaos, the panic, the fear, the terror, feel like they fought back or they terrorize or whatever it is that they're seeking to accomplish.
I mean, I gotta say on a personal level, with people that I know, maybe they're considered narcissistic. And I'm like, these are words that have come to me new. What I've realized is the emotional spaces they try to encapsulate whoever they're targeting, it's to create a helpless space. But that makes them seem like an asshole. But I'm like, I know that I could really shit on this person but I'm like, it could be somebody I was in a relationship with. But it's like, what I realize is they're trying to recreate that helplessness. And that's clearly where this person felt. He felt like he didn't have a choice.
So in other words, let other people have a piece of the pain that he was feeling.
Totally. And yeah, because it does sound like on several levels, the people that should have been in place to assist him in a space of education and supposed safety, there's some elements of the system that failed him, and there's some elements of the system that also sounded like they continue the behavior themselves, even aside from the bullies.
Right.
So it's just, I mean, I think there's a lot more I need to look at into the case, but I can totally see how whatever revenge or like whatever his, again, and I got to know more about how many people were hit, how were they hit, like what was it? Did he just lose it and he's like, then he tried to go to his quiet place to take himself out, and that this was, he had already decided this is it for him. Aside from just wanting to suffer repercussions, it's just like, my work here on this planet is done. Last thing I wanted to say was, this planet in the last like 15 years, 3 billion people, and there's so much war, so much atrocity, so much violence, and these things are becoming so commonplace. That to me is like the most disturbing consequence of, it's like, oh, another one, like another one.
Right.
And just to plug like mental health, and like, if you know anybody that seems like they're struggling, don't leave it up to chance, and don't accept it as a status quo. Like, you can really reach out and help other people. Right. And yeah, just some way, if you yourself need help,
communicate,
you're struggling. Yeah.
Speak up, speak your mind, seek help.
And again, sometimes like do it, like sometimes you got to reach out to 15, 20 people. Sometimes the first 5, 10 are maybe a part of this weird little trap system that you're struggling in, and they're gonna tell you not to reach out and not to say anything. But like, just praying for people in pain that need help, and I hope that whatever we're dialoguing about can really help shed light on you knowing that you deserve and you're worth the peace and that space of mind and sanctity. Nobody deserves to be punked or bullied, and really nobody should die for that either, on either end. But like, don't be messing with the wrong ones.
Exactly. And that concludes our session, man. Thank you very much, Shojin, for
anytime, Smooth.
For being a guest on the S&B Podcast. And there we go.